NordicTrack S22i versus ProForm Tour de France CBC from COSTCO. Yes, the NordicTrack S22i costs $2,000 and the ProForm only costs $385 from COSTCO. So why would I compare these two bikes? Let me explain. Both of these bikes are made by the same parent company. ProForm and NordicTrack are both owned by the same company, and both of these bikes use iFit. Of course, the NordicTrack S22i is the better bike, and it better be considering the price difference, but the ProForm Tour de France CBC from COSTCO is a pretty good value for the money. So let me tell you about the similarities and the differences in these two bikes. For starters, both of these bikes are magnetic resistance and digitally controlled magnetic resistance. Here's what the magnetic resistance and flywheel looks like over here on the S22i. And even though the flywheel looks different on each of these bikes and the way the magnets work to apply that resistance works differently, they both have automatic adjusting resistance through the iFit app. Which leads me straight into my next point. Both of these bikes come with 1 year of iFit for free when you buy them. And that leads me into one of the major differences between these two bikes, and that is the enormous 22-inch screen you get on the NordicTrack S22i that rotates 180 degrees around this way, as well as 180 degrees around that way, but this bike's kind of in the way. I'll show you in a moment. While over here on the ProForm, you do get a screen, but it is not anything like the screen you get on the NordicTrack. The screen on the ProForm gives you simple metrics such as your resistance number, which you use these buttons right here to adjust your resistance number 1 through 16. And you can also get your cadence output here on the little mini screen. I just kick the pedals there, you can see it says 8. There are a few other metrics the ProForm screen will give you, but if you want your power output, or if you want to do the iFit classes, you have to add your own tablet, which you could throw up an iPad or some other form of tablet right up here and connect up the iFit app, and then you can control your resistance digitally through the screen, and you can also take advantage of that automatic adjusting resistance feature on the iFit app with a tablet. This little knob down here on the ProForm is not a resistance knob, it is simply a stop that you push to stop the flywheel in case of an emergency. So the only way to adjust your resistance on this ProForm bike is through these buttons, or if you connect up a tablet and use the iFit app to adjust the resistance, or use the automatic adjusting resistance. Over here on the NordicTrack S22i, this is also a push to stop button. It is not a resistance knob. However, it is a little bit more sturdy over here on the S22i. So how do you adjust that resistance? Well, for one, there are buttons here you can press to adjust the resistance, just pressing these. And also you can adjust the resistance right here on the screen, sliding your finger along on the controls. Which leads me straight into the next very big difference between these two bikes, and that is the incline and decline feature. Over here on the left side of the S22i, there is a plus and minus to incline or decline the entire bike. Additionally, you can adjust that incline and decline right here on the screen just by sliding your finger along here. Right now it's on maximum incline, and I'll go ahead and move it down to minimum. And here's what it looks like and sounds like. So yes, both of these bikes use iFit as their platform for classes to do ride-along, instructor-led classes, and really iFit excels in those instructor-led scenic rides. And yes, both of these bikes do have a maximum resistance of 16 and a minimum resistance of 1, but the way that that maximum resistance feels and the way that the drivetrains feel on each of these bikes is significantly different, and we'll get into that in just a moment. For starters here, the ProForm Tour de France CBC has a flywheel weight of 22 pounds. And if you take a look at the flywheel shape here, you can see that it is kind of thick on the outside diameter, and there is a magnet stack here on top with just a few magnets. The maximum resistance on this bike right from out of the box was not very good. It was not very impressive, and I did modify the maximum resistance on the ProForm bike. I do have a video on how to modify that max resistance, as well as I have a full review on this ProForm bike. I'll put a link to it up here in case you want to watch that later. The flywheel on the S22i is a thin disc, and as you can see, the magnets here work a little bit differently. They pinch the flywheel on each side, and it applies the resistance differently and I can tell you for certain the maximum resistance on the S22i is significantly higher than the ProForm. In fact, in terms of drivetrain feel and maximum resistance, the S22i is right on point, on par with the Peloton Bike Plus. Also, the flywheel mass of the NordicTrack S22i is, I believe, 32 pounds, which is significantly more than the 22-pound flywheel on the ProForm. That being said, here's what the pedals look like over here on the ProForm. They are steel pedals, a cage on one side, and there is no possibility for you to clip in with these pedals unless you change the pedals to your own clip-in style pedals, or potentially if you add your own clip-in cleat to these pedals. I do find it really interesting that the NordicTrack S22i gives you the same exact pedals over here on a $2,000 bike. They are the same steel teeth pedals. You get the cage on one side and no clip-in ability on this pedal unless you modify it or put your own pedals on, which it even says in the manual you can do that. And I would highly recommend you put in clip-in pedals, especially on a $2,000 bike. Aside from the pedal, once you start looking at the crank arm of the S22i, you take a closer look at the mechanics there, you can start to see that in comparison to the ProForm bike, the NordicTrack S22i does have a significantly better drivetrain. And in just a moment, we're gonna get on both these bikes and compare them head to head, back to back, and I'll tell you really how I feel about how the drivetrains feel and what the maximum resistance feels like from one bike to the other. I would like to point out real quick, the maximum user weight on the ProForm Tour de France is 250 pounds, whereas on the NordicTrack S22i, the maximum user weight is 350 pounds. So that is kind of a huge difference between these two bikes. So before I get on each of these bikes and tell you my opinion on the drivetrain feel and maximum resistance and all that stuff, let's take a moment to look at the adjustability real quick. One thing I would like to point out about the adjustability on these two bikes is the riding position. So both of these bikes kind of tend to put you more in a road bike position, a more of an aggressive riding position. The ProForm bike is a little bit more notorious for this, where I have the maximum saddle, I have the seat on the maximum saddle height, and I also have the handlebars on the max height. And as you can see, the seat is above the handlebars, so it kind of puts you in more of an aggressive riding position, and it really kind of stretches you out. So, you know, it's kind of more similar to a road bike. Now, this does help you put down more power to the pedals and helps get you prepared, you know, for riding a road bike in that aerodynamic riding position. Now, a lot of people kind of tend to complain about that riding position. It's a little bit too aggressive for some people. And the NordicTrack S22i, in a sense, does kind of prepare you for that road bike simulated experience. However, the S22i does allow those handlebars to come up higher than on the ProForm bike in relation to the seat. I do not have the seat on the maximum height, so the S22i accommodates tall people for sure. I'm 6'5", and you know, I don't even have the saddle height on the maximum height on the S22i. Handlebars are on the maximum height, but this is a good fit bike, and it does kind of stretch you out just a little bit more than like the Peloton bike, for example. But I am comfortable on the NordicTrack S22i. The ProForm, on the other hand, with that saddle height on the maximum height and the handlebars also on the maximum height, I wish the handlebars came up a little bit higher for me. That being said, the ProForm Tour de France does have holes to click into for raising and lowering the saddle height, as well as up here on the front of the handlebar stem, there are holes you need to click into. So you don't really get micro adjustments, and then also the handlebars do not move forwards or backwards on either one of these bikes. So S22i does not have that forward and backward adjustment. What the NordicTrack S22i does have going for it is there are no holes to click into for raising and lowering the stem for the handlebars, as well as raising and lowering the seat. There are no holes you need to click into, so you get micro adjustments all around. So now what I'm gonna do is just hop on both these bikes back to back and tell you how I feel about how the drivetrain feels, and really just compare, you know, a $2,000 drivetrain, $2,000 experience to a $385 experience. And, you know, is it really worth it to upgrade to the S22i? How much more bang for the buck are you getting for the ProForm Tour de France? Let's get into that. So starting over here on the ProForm, as you can see right away, saddle height is on the maximum height. I'm 6'5", and this bike really does put me in that like road bike position. You know, it's getting me aerodynamic and really preparing me for training for like an outdoor road bike riding experience. On this bike, having the seat on maximum saddle height, which gets my knee in just about the perfect riding position. So this bike does fit a taller person in terms of saddle height, but in terms of raising the handlebars up, this is as relaxed of a riding position I can get in while sitting in the saddle. And then getting out of the saddle, my knees do have maybe a little bit of trouble. Like I can hit my knees on the handlebars. Now obviously you should be keeping your booty back when you're riding, but if you lean forward as a tall person, you can hit your knees on the handlebars. However, you should be fine as long as you keep your booty back and ride like you should be riding. So resistance is on 1 right now, and like I said before, I modified the resistance on this bike to make the maximum resistance higher. But drivetrain feel, actually, inertia from the flywheel is actually pretty good. For a $385 bike, it's magnetic resistance, belt driven, and the inertia is really not too bad, really. Like I said, I do have a full review on this video. I'll put a little link to it up here in case you want to watch that later. This is a pretty good value bike though. I mean, if you want iFit, this is a good way to get your foot in the door. So on this bike, the only way to adjust the resistance without adding your own tablet and pulling up the iFit app is to use these little buttons up here on the screen. And the resistance on this bike does change relatively slow compared to most other bikes. And I just cranked it from like resistance 1 up to 8. So I'm on resistance 8 right now, and it doesn't make that big of a difference for like the first like 8 or 9 resistances. And now I'm on max resistance already. Oh yeah, and now that I modified the maximum resistance, it's actually not too bad on this bike. But it's still like not great modified, but it's pretty good. And with the maximum resistance modified using the video that I used to modify the maximum resistance, it's not bad. There's a lot of bikes I have here that have a better maximum resistance even after the modification. But without the modification on max resistance on this bike, it's just not that good straight from COSTCO, honestly. Speaking of issues with this bike, one thing that I know a lot of people have been commenting on is when they do the iFit classes on the ProForm Bike, when you bring your own tablet and you do the iFit classes, people are saying that when they do the iFit classes, the iFit rides, it's only modifying that resistance from like 1 to 6 and not going all the way to 16. So if anybody's found a workaround for that, let me know in the comment section below. So let me bring the resistance down from 16 to like 10, which is probably more like 50%, even though it's not halfway between 16 and 1. So I mean, drivetrain on this bike is like not that bad, honestly. For 385 bucks, you kind of get a lot for your money on this bike. But let's hop over to the S22i and see how that stacks up. So coming over here on the S22i, like the very first thing I noticed is it also has that same forward aggressive riding position. I do have the handlebars on the maximum height. The seat is not on the maximum height, so this bike does accommodate taller riders pretty well, since the seat can come up really high. But if you want a relaxed riding position, neither one of these bikes is going to be the bike you want, probably. There are better bikes for more relaxed riding positions. However, if you do want a bike that kind of mimics that road bike feel, both of these bikes do that pretty well. So the S22i, when I'm out here in position number 3 on the handlebars all the way out on the end, you can see it really kind of gets me down in that aerodynamic riding position. I find a lot of the times when I'm riding this bike, I get my hands up here on these triangles or up here on these for a slightly more relaxed riding position, which this bike is quite a bit better than the ProForm in that regard. The next thing I really noticed about the S22i compared to the ProForm is the drivetrain. And the drivetrain on this bike, you can tell a huge difference in terms of the inertia and the mass of that flywheel, like right out of the gate. This is on resistance 1 and incline 0. And when you stop pedaling or try to stop pedaling, that inertia just really carries you through. And what that does is help you even out your cadence at when you're at a higher RPM or out of the saddle, or just riding, it helps you even out your cadence to a more consistent pedal stroke. So pedaling along on resistance 1, if you hear a little click, it's because the seat, for some reason, I can't seem to get it tightened up enough to stop it from wobbling. So I don't know what the deal is with this seat, but like, I can't seem to get it tightened up enough to stop it from clicking like that. So in terms of drivetrain feel on the S22i, this bike feels like a really quality machine, and it feels really nice. You know, that inertia, it really makes a huge difference with all the components in the drivetrain, the flywheel mass, and the maximum resistance on this bike is significantly more. So let's get into that. So on the NordicTrack S22i, the maximum resistance is 24. I'm on 1 right now, and I'll go ahead and just bump it straight up to like 13 or 12. And that kind of puts it on like a medium resistance. The resistance on this bike changes much more quickly than on the ProForm bike. And let me just go ahead and bump it up a little bit more here to like 17. And you can feel the resistance come on like very quickly and definitely adding on resistance. Bumping it to 24, now we're on a flat incline, and the way this bike works is if you go up an incline, it increases that maximum resistance. So I'm on max resistance of 24, and it's pretty strong, but it's not that strong, honestly, like in comparison to max resistance on a Peloton Bike Plus. So in order to unlock those higher max resistances, what you need to do is increase your incline. So I'll put it on 11. And as the incline comes up, the resistance gets harder, and it also changes the angle of the bike, obviously. So if you want to get to that maximum resistance, I'll put it on 20. Oops. So incline is on 20 now, and the resistance is as high as it can go. And you know, the maximum resistance on this bike is like pretty strong. This feels like a pretty serious hill climb. Honestly, like, you wouldn't be able to do this for very long. It's measuring my power output at 430, cadence at 41. And also, another thing I'd like to point out is, let me drop the resistance down to like 5. So it's down to 5. Now it's down to 1. But I'm on that incline right now, so it still simulates like I'm going up a hill. It does make the riding position a little more relaxed because it brings the seat down and the handlebars up. However, it simulates you riding up a hill. So let me show you what it looks like if I switch the whole thing and go down a hill, for example. So we'll bump it to -10. It goes a little bit slow and it makes some noise. And it really kind of feels like you're going down the hill as it adjusts, because like the resistance gets even lighter. Even though I didn't modify the resistance number, the incline going down to the decline position, it kind of really feels like I'm going down a hill. I have to like support myself with my arms here. And then you can like independently modify the resistance numbers. I'll put it on max. And max resistance on the decline is what it looks like. Pretty easy, honestly. Like my cadence is 120, 130. But if I make that incline up to 20% incline, it's getting really hard. Let me see what I can get the max cadence to now, like the watts. So cadence is at 47, 50. That's really about as much as I can do. Now this thing tells me my watts is like 500, 520. I don't think so. That being said, it is really difficult. So popping straight back over here to the ProForm bike, you know, it feels fine. Like when I get on this bike, I really just kind of think like this is really honestly a pretty darn good value. Like if you want to get an iFit and you don't want to spend $2,000, the ProForm Tour de France is a good way to get your foot in the door to indoor cycling. Let me crank that resistance back up to max again, just see how that feels in comparison. So it finally just adjusted. So max resistance on this bike is definitely quite a bit less. And the number only goes up to 16 on this, where it does go to 24 on the NordicTrack. Not that that matters really. So let me give you my summary and final thoughts on the ProForm Tour de France from COSTCO versus the NordicTrack S22i. Both of these bikes are like really good for simulating an outdoor riding experience. They both put you in that like road bike riding position, a little bit more aggressive riding position. And the scenic rides on iFit are really where NordicTrack and ProForm excels. So here you can see is a Vietnam ride. This is a 35-minute ride, 10 miles. Estimated 928 calories. Let me click on play. So right away you can see it loads the map here.
I am Casey Zog, your iFit trainer. Today we are in front of the historic post office in Ho Chi Minh City. We're not here to deliver the mail, but rather do some FTP intervals. So let's roll out.
So right away you get a little intro there.
Of Ho Chi Minh, we gotta make sure we've warmed up properly.
So I turned the volume down, but really where iFit excels here is like this dude is riding ahead of you and he's coaching you, and it really kind of simulates an experience. Like you can see like your hands on the handlebars there and you're riding through the streets here in Vietnam, and this dude takes you on like a tour basically, and you get to kind of view everything that's going on around you, and you get to go on basically like a scenic ride that really kind of makes it feel like you're in Vietnam riding. And so if you're like really into like outdoor riding and road biking, iFit is really where these two bikes both excel, because you get the same sort of app on both these bikes. Here we are 9 minutes into the ride here in Vietnam, safely riding our bikes through the streets. Don't need to worry about getting ran over by any of these cars or anything. So as we're riding along here, this automatically adjusts the incline and the decline over here. It's all flat riding right now, so it's not adjusting that. But the resistance also changes as the instructor calls it out. Also, you can independently adjust that stuff, but it's really kind of neat. Let me turn on the volume again. So I'm turning up the trainer volume. You can turn up the trainer volume and music volume independently, so you don't have to listen to the iFit music if you don't want to.
Make sure you're always looking to your right and left for motorbikes. You don't want to get separated. So let's stay rolling here. Nice work. Keep going. Keep spinning. Keep that cadence between 70 and 80.
So he's giving you cadence recommendations.
I definitely can tell we're hanging around a fish market, given some of those unique smells.
Luckily, we don't need to smell the fish market. So this is just one example of an iFit class. This one doesn't have like the beautiful scenery necessarily. This is kind of like more of like an urban ride. But still, you know, iFit really excels in these sort of like instructor-led classes where you basically ride behind the dude, the instructor, whether it's a guy or a girl. I've done rides with guys and girls. You know, you basically just kind of tail behind them, and they tour. They give you a tour. They give you instruction and guidance. So it's pretty neat. So if that's your thing, NordicTrack and ProForm, they both use that iFit app. So, you know, on the ProForm bike over here you get from COSTCO, doesn't come with a screen on it, but you know, they do make different variations. You know, they have the NordicTrack S10i, which I heard that they do sell that at COSTCO. So it's basically same kind of thing, but a smaller screen. Or like the ProForm bike, you can add your own tablet, or you know, you could watch iFit on a separate screen altogether. it just won't give you that automatic adjusting resistance if you don't connect it up through Bluetooth. I mean, $385, $2,000. Obviously, this is the flagship model here, the S22i. So if you know you like iFit and you know you like outdoor cycling, whether it be mountain biking or road biking, you know, iFit is a really good platform for that sort of thing. And both these bikes are in that same ecosystem with the iFit. If you just kind of want to test the waters, the ProForm from COSTCO is a really good way to kind of get your foot in the door, get a free year of iFit, and then after that, you know, you can kind of decide where you want to go on the iFit. If you do want to use a different platform other than iFit, the ProForm Bike probably isn't going to be your best option. There's a lot of other options I have back here that are better compatible for, like, you know, Apple Fitness Plus or Echelon or Les Mills or any other sort of platform. So, you know, these are like the iFit, you know, basically least expensive iFit bike versus most expensive iFit bike, or maybe not the most expensive, but this is the flagship S22i. Another thing the S22i does have is the fan here, which has multiple speeds. And there's also an auto feature on the fan. So it does make a little bit of noise. This bike can be noisy, but doesn't necessarily have to be noisy. If you use the incline and decline, definitely does make some noise for going up and down, and the fan makes some noise. But the fan is nice because it kind of not only gives you that cool breeze, but kind of like simulates that feeling of like riding outdoors even more. And then you do get like the little weight holder up here in the front as well. So it comes with a pair of 3-pound weights, which just be careful not to smash those on your screen or break your fan here. I only have one of the weights out for now. But you know, if you want to do those workouts on the bike with the weights, it does have the weight rack there for you. I do have more videos on the S22i. The screen does rotate all the way around 180 degrees that way and 180 degrees this way as well for doing workouts on and off the bike. This one's just kind of in the way here, so it doesn't fully rotate. If this video has been helpful to you, give me a thumbs up. Any questions or comments you have, please leave down in the comment section below, and I'll try my best to get back to you. Click that subscribe button and turn on notifications, and I'll see you in my next video.